Assalam.
Assalamu
Wa
alaikum wa
alaikum
rahmatullah.
assalam.
I was waiting for you to say it. Normally we
No, I
overlap,
was,
and I think we
yeah,
both
well,
waited today. How are you?
alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I'm struck by your radiance tonight, mashallah. Yeah,
These
this
words.
is,
No one ever calls me by these words.
well,
Where have you Where have you been all my life?
actually, your wife is giving me hints to try to, like behind the
Really?
scenes, say this. No, no, no. But it's, really, it's such a pleasure. And as I was telling you earlier, I feel like I've benefited so much from the wonderful way in which you frame the surahs, and I love hearing some of the transmitted teachings from like Dr. Asrar and some of your teachers, and it's been just such a pleasure to be on this journey with you. So may God reward you for that. It's been a real blessing for me.
Amen. Amen.
Yes.
And
And
I have I have to say, likewise, it's been a wonderful month. I can't believe we're already in the 26th night.
no. The mission and vision of the American Islamic College, to me, pretty much now synonymous with the work. I believe in the transformative power of education, and not just education that is informative, but in education that is transformative, education that really changes how we live. But I think that the Muslims of America need a place that they can come as a Muslim space. This is their space. It belongs to them.
MashaAllah. Well,
MashaAllah.
let me get started. Just before we came on, Dr. Timothy has been making, an appeal for contributing to the college, and he asked me to do this one. And where you can tell we're both terrible at this. We just enjoy doing the work, and and contributing to the success. But it all requires finances to keep the staff, to keep the faculty, to run the facilities, and to offer all of these wonderful programs. And so this is our college, your college. It's America's college, and if you believe in it, if you think that this has potential, and the college has a history. It's been around for 40 years. It's had its ups and downs, but really we feel that it was for the first time accredited a year ago, and the potential is incredible. So we're just getting started in a way, although it's been 40 years, and this time it seems like it's for real. And I hope that is evident. It's been evident to me, and I feel to others as well. People are beginning to believe, like you say, and we'd like you to join this effort this is not the only cause. There are many causes, and give to all of them, but also think of this one as an important one that's important for our community. I mean, when you have your own platform, you can say things and configure things and put things on the agenda and advocate in ways that it's not always easy to do from the platforms of others, as inclusive as they would like to be. And at some point, we also don't want to be ghettoized. So that's not at all the intention of the college, is that this is Muslim and Islamic as opposed to anything else. That's not at all how I understood the call here, that this contributes in an important way, but not in an exclusive way. And there are other colleges, I've been part of them, and we celebrate them. And we need more and more. So support them all, but also include this one as you think about your financial contributions for the month. And with that, I'm going to just get into because that's where we love to be, get into the Qur'an. And as we get started, I want to point out a couple of questions that were sent to me
Okay.
from previous nights. I don't think we can address them, but they were posted on, and these were highlighted. So one was so night 24, one from night 22, and one from night 15 and night 18. So I'll just read them briefly. One says, Salams at the end, Dr. Mahan paused for a bit on many of those whom we have created. And I'm trying to read into it. Does it mean there's more creation of Allah, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't revealed to us? So I honestly can't remember what I had done at, that night 15, but certainly there's things that God has created that we have no idea about. So we have very little knowledge. Even about our own creation, we know very little. So the ruh, the spirit, which we all have. And so there are things that we know of, and many, many things that we don't know in God's creation. And that's true even of things that are present right now. I mean, there's the visible, just as an example, there's the visible spectrum of light. And then there's a whole invisible spectrum. And, your devices like the phone can see that light, and it operates on that light, but we can't see it, but it's present. And so there are lots of things like that. And we believe in beyond that, those are still things we can somehow see through instruments. But then there's a whole unseen, al-ghayb, another dimension of reality that at least the material eye can't see, but we believe the inner eye can perceive a portion of it. And that's what that basira is, the insight. So that's one answer. Maybe the other question was the optimism of the divine. You describe as a mystery, is suggestive of the Prophet ﷺ, referred to as mercy to all the worlds. God has not referred to any other by that title. So I think that's a comment. Then on night 22, there was a comment, wow, condemning patriarchy. Would humans have survived without patriarchy? Is this a mere feminist diatribe? So I think that's a complaint. Should I keep reading, or do you want to address that?
I think it's to me, if it's true that historically humankind needed patriarchy in order to survive, I liken it to one of those childhood survival mechanisms that we develop, especially for those people who face trauma. It's a mechanism that may have served you as a child, may have protected you, may have shielded you at that time. But when you enter into a more evolved state, into an adult state, it has to be let go. It has to be unmade so that you can have a healthy adult life. And so I think, it may be that there are benign forms of patriarchy, but patriarchy in the sense that men are in control and that men are dominating, and that this world is primarily kind of a man's world, and this religion is for men. And I've seen countless panels that are discussing the place of women in Islam that are people completely by men, and there's a problem there. And so representation, I think, is critically important.
Present company accepted.
Yeah, no, here we are too.
Present company accepted, of course.
Yeah, but but I think that we have we're just two guys trying to work through this incredible text together, and we're doing it in a very sincere, very candid, very non-hierarchical way. But it's true that I think if there was ever a time that patriarchy served us, it's probably not now, because I think in my view. And so I think we have to let go of that, and then we have to read the Qur'an with other eyes.
I see. And, I get you. The counter argument is, just because I think this is an important point, I don't think we're going to resolve it, but just for the sake of conversation and also food for thought, this idea that there's a childhood and then there's a growing up and a maturity, and the patriarchy was necessary as a child, but not as maybe in maturity. It raises the interesting question then, that if there are patriarchal elements in the religion, the Arab custom, or in the Qur'an, right? That's how it's been read. Then why would God send the final messenger at a time when humanity was still in childhood? That's a theological question.
Yeah. The
Um,
Quranic answer seems to suggest that this was the last part of the planet that had not received a messenger. You know,
right,
as you mentioned again, the beautiful hadith about the whole structure just missing one brick, and that the Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace, said,
right,
I'm that one brick." That's one
right,
answer. But then there's another answer that really raises the question as to whether the Quran is, in those more patriarchal moments, whether it's descriptive, meaning it's just describing the tribal reality of society at that time, or whether it's proscriptive, meaning that for all time and for all places, this is the standard and this is the way it must be. And I think
right,
that many people read the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and the early history of Islam, that prophetic period. I think many people read that as um, a man prophetically stretching his society to the extent that it could be stretched, and clearly plotting a trajectory toward equality, toward um, you know um, more participation of women in the life of the community and in the life of the faith. And I think that even the way he interacted with women, even very powerful women in his own time, is a beautiful example of the fact that he was not a man who was threatened by powerful women. In fact, he
of
seems to
course, yeah,
he seemed to really love those strong female characters in his own day.
yeah.
And I think that
And
that
Khadija is yeah,
yeah.
Khadija is a great example of that. I mean,
Mm.
marrying someone his senior who took the initiative to marry him. And just for the audience, descriptive versus prescriptive. I mean, the way to understand that very simply is, say, for example, that verse that says, "Men are the protectors and maintainers of women," right? And so, however you read that verse, would mean men are the protectors and maintainers of women in your society, uh, like in this present culture.
Mhm.
Read it prescriptively would be men are the protectors and maintainers of women, absolutely, essentially, and it's got to be that way wherever you are, because and that's a prescriptive reading. And so the Quran, depending on how you read it, you will derive something differently from it. And for most of its history, it's been read in most aspects prescriptively. But especially today, as we've learned to historicize things, even historicizing the whole tradition, if you read it descriptively, doesn't mean it's not revelation, but just that it says it might be saying other things. Another example of this is, I mean, in science, because I thought about this a little bit. But we read just Yasin, with Surah Yasin, Ash-Shamsu Tajri, the sun moves, right? And in terms of perception, like as you perceive it, the sun is
Mhm.
moving around the horizon. But an objective, it's not trying to give you an objective reality sense of it. Now we understand the sun's movement in very different ways, like around the galaxy and so on. But the motion we perceive is actually the Earth revolving around them. Wasn't the case. So it was read differently based on their own experience. Um, so this is the kind of shift that has to occur with evolving paradigms of thought and of experience and of culture. Okay, there's a couple more questions. While condemning patriarchy, just one last question. This is from night 24, so that's just a couple nights ago.
Mm.
On the discussion on gender being a spectrum. Again, the science is
Mm.
clear. There are rare instances of those being born with both sexual organs, and less rare those with gender dysphoria. Scripture, I think we may have one of us may have said that, but as eternal miracle, it is for all time. So if you say ancient scripture, it can have this sense that it's outdated, and certainly that wasn't intended at all for it to have that meaning. But thank you for being mindful of that and reminding us. Distinctions between male and female are made multiple times in the Quran, even in details of inheritance. As an example, but there are many differences and rules for men and women. We have equal opportunity to be granted the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and paradise. And then there's this a second comment on sexuality as Muslim have to bear, and also know that the actions, not the internal feelings, are prohibited. It's a longer comment, but those points are well taken. Oh, and it ends with thank you for a wonderful discussion each night. So even though it's being critical, it's appreciated at least the exchange. So thank you for that. And you want to comment on any of those, or should we just move?
No, I just want to thank everyone for your engagement. I think this is it's really important. And so these evenings really have always been intended to be inviting evenings, welcoming people to engage the Qur'an and to engage with us, and for us to kind of model what that kind of sincere contemporary engagement can look like. And so we are, we're still learning ourselves, and I don't think that there's ever been a moment where we've tried to impose an authoritative reading upon one another or upon anyone else. And so I just want to welcome you to the community of people who are engaged with this text and really trying to understand in a very sincere way what it's saying and how it applies to contemporary life. And so this is really wonderful. So I really value and honor your engagement. So thank you.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Hey.
We go to David Solomon. This is where we left last time, right at the end of Surah 38.
Surah Sad, Naam.
Sad. It's spelled sad, but it's actually the transliteration of the letter Sad, one of that Arabic letters. And we gave David Solomon. So remember the trial of David, with the two guests who came and said, "This I've not," and then they tested David. And now his son Solomon, he was an excellent servant who always tried. When well-bred, light-footed horses were paraded before him near the close of day, he kept saying, "My love of fine things is part of my remembering my Lord," until the horses disappeared from sight. Rudduha alayya, bring them back to me, he said, and started to stroke their legs and necks, right? Or passed his hand over. The horses were brought back. We certainly tested Solomon. So in this cryptic kind of description on in tradition, there was a test for him, reducing him to a mere skeleton on his throne. This was explained in a previous surah. We didn't read it, where when he died, he was resting on a staff, and he remained that way for many years, and they didn't know that he had passed until the termites had devoured his staff and he fell over, and they said, "Oh, he's gone." And so he said, he turned to us and prayed, "Lord, forgive me, grant me such power as no one after me will have. You are most generous, the most generous provider." So we gave him power over the wind, which at his request ran gently wherever he willed, and the jinn, every kind of builder and diver, and others chained in fetters. This is our gift. So give or withhold as you wish, without account. His reward will be nearness to us and a good place to return. And then it goes on to the story of Job. So, yeah. So
I suppose I have a few questions for you there.
Go ahead.
So interestingly, the jinn here are referred to as the shayateen, which can mean the like the devils. So, but but here it seems to be used in a kind of neutral way, that the shayateen, right? You know, the every kind of builders. It's an interesting reference to the jinn here. We know that the shayateen are jinn, but because they're not angels. Angels don't have the capacity to rebel. And I was curious as to what you thought of that, and it may be that the study of Qur'an has something to say about that as well.
Yes, it does. I'm just turned to it as you asked. It says here, every builder and diver means that the jinn would do whatever Solomon willed by way of building on the earth and extracting riches from the sea.
Mm-hmm.
That's and then air, land, and sea. So total dominance, full spectrum dominance.
Right, right, absolutely.
Other jinn bound together in fetters due to their recalcitrance.
Okay.
I think our video is skipping today a little bit.
Little bit. Yeah. But I heard everything you said. So I think
Yes.
that's
I thought you were looking. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's what that means. From the trial of the horses, it's got a really interesting explanation. It says he was assembling these horses for a campaign. Yeah, just gave me a notice that my connection is a bit shaky.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to low definition. Is that okay?
Okay.
That might.
Yeah.
So a little bit lower resolution.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, is that better? So this is reported that Solomon's horses, which he had inherited from David, were displayed before him, and that he was so engrossed with them that the sun had set. Remember, they were brought to him at kind of close to the setting of the sun, and the time for performing the prescribed prayer had passed. Until the sun was taken behind the veil could also be read as until they were taken behind the veil, meaning that Solomon was engrossed with the horses until they left his sight. Bring them back to me takes the pronoun as a reference to the horses. They bring the horses back. But some understood the pronoun ha as bring the sun back so that I can perform the prayer in time. Sets. That's an interesting reading.
Because the sun is linguistically feminine in Arabic. Yeah.
It's linguistically feminine. Yeah. Thank you. And so, it goes on with a little bit more detail, but it's interesting how he's so engrossed in the love of these horses that he says that he mixes that with his love of his Lord, but he's actually forgetting his Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's something in here about confusing your passions, or your interests for devotion. Careful, right? And there was an earlier verse that says, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ. Like God, for the human beings, for man, لِلنَّاسِ, for human beings, has been adorned the love of women and sons,
and children,
and heaped up golds of silver and gold, and thoroughbred horses. And what's interesting here is this is all kind of mata. It's like property. And so putting women here, also and sons as property in a way is reflective of a certain moment in cultural history, period, where in the Near East, especially, that was one way to consider women as property. And Hina Azam has written about this from the University of Texas at Austin, on the old worldviews that can still be read. And so this is again a case for a bit more the need for historicizing, reading descriptively. All right. Yeah, so that was Solomon. I suppose for us the lesson is be careful in getting lost in the world, such that you forget your Lord. Yeah, guard your prayer. Yeah,
there's always more in every surah, but I'm wondering if we can move on to Surah Al-Zumar now.
Let's do it.
Okay, this is Surah number 39, of the Qur'an, also Meccan surah. And let's see. And
Yeah.
and is there any framing you want to do for this surah, or should we just jump in?
I can frame. So this is before the Hawamim. So the next group of surahs, there'll be 7 of them, I believe, until surah number 46. So 40 to 46, 7 surahs that begin with Hamim. Zumar doesn't, but it ties in with them thematically in terms of setting them up. Especially the first 4 surahs have this incredible progression on the issue of Tawheed. And so I'm going to lump them together and point them out, if that's okay, very briefly. So if you look at Zumar, there's a repetition of this phrase that you see in verse number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Inna anzalna ilayka al-kitab kitaba bil-haq. The phrase fa'budillaha mukhlisan lahud-din. And so worship God with, you see that phrase?
That's right.
Or
Yeah,
serve God with total devotion. And then you see, a repetition of that. Let me in further verses several times throughout the surah. In Surah Ghafir, the next surah, I'm going to take you to verse number 14. So that's 14.
Okay.
Now look at the way that this has been phrased. Fad'ullah. Do you see the progression?
Yeah.
So then the first one, it was fa'budillah. So
Yeah.
worship God. And now it's fad'ullah mukhlisina lahud-din. So call upon God. Call upon God. Make dua, supplication to God. Mukhlisina lahud-din, which is
sincere devotion.
Yes, sincere devotion to Him.
Yeah.
Dedicating to Him alone.
Yeah.
In the next surah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the element of sincerity in the Arabic of both of those is very, very central.
Right. So the first is you yourselves devote yourself to God. And the second is you call to God.
Mm-hmm.
And in Surah Fussilat or Hamim as-Sajda, this is verse number 30 in that sequence. So let me find it. Waman ahsanu qawlan. That's the verse.
Yeah.
What's the number?
Yeah,
verse 33. So if you notice in Zumar,
yes,
it's fad'ullah. Fad'ullah. In Zumar, it's fa'budillah.
Mm-hmm.
In Ghafir, it's fad'ullah. And in Fussilat is waman ahsanu qawlan mimman da'a ilallah.
So who is more beautiful in their speech than the one who calls to God?
Calls to God.
I mean, call people to God, calling the world to God.
So there's the progression. Can you see it? It's it's lovely. And then in Surah Ash-Shura, where the modes of revelation and the attributes of God, it's just a climax in a sense of this Tawheed. And we can look at some of that more closely.
Tawheed
maybe
being the affirming, the active affirmation of God's unity. Yes.
God's unity and oneness. There it'll be an aqimuddin. And so you have worship, prayer,
calling to God, or
calling to God, and then establishing the deen in your life, in the world, and it's for all the prophets, as it was for Noah and Abraham and Moses and Jesus.
Okay, so we've got worshiping, calling upon God, and then calling the world to God, and then establishing the religion.
Yes.
Yes, beautiful.
And it's just a lovely progression in this sequence, and then you can view so many of the themes revolving around there.
Mm-hmm. Lovely.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we're
So
back in Surah Zumar.
yeah,
And so for you, this, even though this is not one of the Hamim surahs, that this is kind of thematically setting us up for the coming Hamim surahs.
yes, yes,
Yes. One thing that gets mentioned several times in Surah Zumar, and also Zumar, and then also in the Hamim surahs, is this what I call kind of the foul weather friends. We talk about fair weather friends, people who are with you when life is good, and they'll enjoy life with you as long as you've got money and you're doing well. But the moment you're not doing well, they leave you. What the Quran is describing about humans is just the opposite when it comes to God. It says, repeatedly, we're going to have the Quran telling us that, when we bestow hardships upon people, they're calling out to God, they're reaching for God, they're relying upon God. But then when we bestow a favor upon him, I'm reading now, for example, in ayah number 8 in Surah Zumar, when trouble troubleth a human being, he cries upon his Lord, turning to him in repentance, right? And then when we bestow a favor upon him, the man thinks that he did this himself, thinking that this was something that he did. And so again and again, we're going to have this reminder that that hardship drives us to God, and tests and trials drive us to God. But ease is a very dangerous thing spiritually, because ease is where we start thinking like, we've seen repeatedly in the stories of the past, that we then fall into the delusion that it's because of our knowledge, it's because of our skill, it's because of our efforts, that for some reason now we're responsible for the goodness in our lives. And so this, I have several passages throughout this surah and others that I've labeled as the foul weather friends passages, because it seems to be an aspect of human nature that the Quran is calling to mind in these Meccan surahs in a very very repeated and deliberate way.
No, that's a fantastic highlight that you have. I saw it and I passed over it, but because we've looked at it, but it's definitely emphasized here. It makes me think that when you're on a plane, right, and it hits massive turbulence, I feel like it's like the ships they're talking about here, like when the ship hits the storms, or when you fall into some trouble, you realize that you're helpless, right? And you might be done for, and there's nobody who can help you except God at that time. And so you're close to him. But then when you're delivered from that, you're back on land, and you go back. And one of the the flaws in thinking there is you're off the plane, right? But you're still sinking. It's just delayed. I mean, this is all going to end. We're gonna crash at some point, whatever metaphor you want to use. We're all terminally ill. We're born that way. This is limit, but we forget forever, so we delay it, and that becomes a kind of heedlessness. But what I feel what God is telling us, no, you're on that ship right now. It's rocking, and you just don't realize it, and you're going to be done for sooner or later. Might happen suddenly, and so remember that.
Yeah, because the promise, the certainty of the coming of the hour, meaning the certainty of the coming of Judgment Day, is kind of the end game for everyone. And so this is just like the remembrance of death in spirituality, that it's in that remembrance of our mortality that keeps us, it kind of keeps us focused, keeps us on track.
Yeah. And here, just verse 11, just so you can hear it. قل إني أمرت أن أعبد الله مخلصا له الدين. And then verse number 14. قل الله أعبد مخلصا له ديني. So you can see that phrase, is repeated, and it'll come again. But if you look at verse 22, I love this.
No, but we should translate that. So let's
Yes. So I have been commanded to be the first, say I have been commanded to serve God, right? To be devoted to God, dedicating my worship entirely to Him. That same phrase that we saw in the beginning.
Sincerity.
Or say, with sincerity. It is Allah I serve with my sincere and exclusive devotion. And then, it asks, it says, serve whatever you want besides Him. That's, you're in loss. But if you look at verse 22, is the one whose heart Allah has, so that he has received enlightenment from Allah. Maybe a better translation. Let me listen to the Arabic. أَفَمَنْ شَرَحَ اللَّهُ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ فَهُوَ عَلَى نُورٍ مِّن رَبِّهِ.
Yeah.
What about the one whose heart God has opened in devotions, in light from his Lord? And here you can see the connection of the heart to the light, which was in Surah An-Nur. So I thought that was a lovely expression. There's a verse 30 stood out to me, where it says, surely, Prophet, you will die. See, there it is.
Yeah.
And so will they.
Yeah.
Innaka mayyitun wa innahum mayyitun. It's certain.
Is it, this could also be translated from the Arabic as you're dying, right? Like you're already in the process of dying. This is ism fa'al, right? So the active participle, right? So, and so are they, right? So we are all in the process. We're all in the process of leaving this world.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm talking about someone who's looking at his 60th birthday looming immediately in front of him. But it's true, right, that we are all in the process.
May Allah preserve.
No, I mean, wa iyyakum, but we're all in the process of returning to God, and so it's it can be translated in the future tense, the way a lot of these translations do it, that you will die, but literally, like, we're all dying. We're all already in process.
Yeah, and I mean, living life with that awareness, like when you deal with people, when you encounter the world as a dying person, meeting dying people.
Yeah,
it changes your perspective. It should.
and it really just simplifies things. And dying is something that we don't like to talk about. It's uncomfortable, but when people are getting near to the threshold of this world, it can be really liberating. I can remember one of my dear cousins was many years ago was getting close to the threshold of this world, and I went to visit him. He lived in a small ranching town, and I went and visited him, and I just asked him. I said, "So, are you ready?" and he was like so uplifted by that question, and because it was on his heart, it was on his mind, but it was an uncomfortable conversation to have, and I think that's it's a beautiful thing that we don't, dying is as natural for us as being born, right? And so it's part of our life. We were literally born to die, and so we are the ones who delude ourselves into thinking that we're going to be building these structures that will last forever, or that we'll be building these companies that will last forever, or building these nations that will last forever. And as you've reminded us very early on in our Quranic conversation here, that the Quran teaches us that everything is going to perish except for the face of God. Everything. And so we're almost building things, or we should be building things with the almost the awareness of the Zen designs in the sand, that these are beautiful, intricate designs, and then they're raked clean, and then they start over again. There's this, so there's a need to be detached from what we build and what we do, because it's all ultimately, it's all going to be wiped away.
Yeah. I've got a couple of questions here. Not all jinns are devils, right? Certainly not. Shayateen min al-jinn wal-ins. Some people are devils. Shayateen, and some jinns are, but not all. Another question is, why should one be afraid of dying?
There you go. Well, I guess that's the question, right? Is the preparation for death, as with the people that we revere as being friends of God in Islam. It's not their birthday that we celebrate; it's their death day, which we call their marriage day, right? This is the day that they are, in a way, that they're married to their beloved. This is the day that they're reunited with their beloved, and so the Urs of a wali, right, is the day that people gather and celebrate. And so I think that that really part of the reorientation of faith that faith brings in our lives is certainly a confidence that we all die, but science could give us that. But it's a kind of comfort and expectation that when our time comes, that we should be ready. And one of the Quranic prayers, of course, is that that God will not take us until we are in a state of surrender and submission to Him. And this is one of the things that we pray for almost every Friday. But it's but death should it's understandable that death makes us uncomfortable. But even as my dear mother says, look, I'm not afraid to die. It's just that I've never done it before. And so it's going to be a new experience, but
I think some of it's the unknown, how it will happen, some of those things, but especially I think at one point it was seen, and in places where there's war and great suffering, it becomes just part of life is death. You see it, but what we've done in this society is we make it hidden. We don't like to see it, and we just remove ourselves from it because we're so absorbed in the dunya. The dunya means the world, but it also means that which is near. That is immediately before us, and the akhirah, which is the one that will come, later, which could be very soon. We just put it out of sight. And what the Quran as a reminder is trying to do to us and say, no, keep it ever present, because it's right there, and don't be deluded by what you have near you.
And in fact, one of the evenings ahead of us, we're going to be reading that, بَلْ تُؤْثِرُونَ بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, that you are so enamored with this world, but the hereafter is better and more abiding.
Right.
And so we're going to get there. But I want to just sort of interject here. Then we have a really interesting passage in Surah Az-Zumar about the connection between death and sleep and dreams.
Oh, I'm right. I'm right on the same place. Go ahead.
On 42. So why don't you read that for us, and we'll talk about that. This is a really interesting ayah.
Yeah, I'll read the Abdul Halim. So, okay. God takes the souls of the dead, and the souls of the living while they sleep. He keeps hold of those whose death He has ordained, and sends the others back until their appointed time. there truly are signs for those who reflect. So, yeah, it seems like it's saying that sleep is a kind of death.
Yeah.
What do
And
you? Yeah,
sleep is also a moment when the soul can migrate. It leaves the body, and so it's this is really interesting. This connectivity between sleep and death. It's just that people who die in their sleep, God keeps the soul. This is yatawaffa
mm,
al-unfus, right? So God just takes the souls, right, upon their
right.
death, and for those who are sleeping, He just returns them at an
Yeah,
appointed time. And this raises all kinds of really interesting questions about dreams, especially visionary dreams, as moments or places, if we can talk about them spatially, places of connectivity between the living and the dead. And I
mm,
know so many people who have seen departed loved ones in these kinds of visionary dreams and have had what they believe to be very real communication. And of course, we have a lot of discussion of that within, certainly within the medieval classical Islamic, tradition about this idea of this connectivity between sleep and death, and the possibility of having true visionary experiences in sleep. What does the study of Quran tell us about this?
yeah. No, it's a lovely little section. I can read it. God takes the souls by sending the angel of death to them, as in, say, and this is quoted, the angel of death who has been entrusted with you will take you, then unto your Lord shall you be returned. In death, souls are completely detached from the body, and in sleep they are partially detached. This is Fakhruddin al-Razi.
Mm.
And as in this reference in the Quran, Surah 6, this An'am, verse 60. He it is who takes your souls by night. Regarding the relationship between the two, a hadith states, sleep is the brother of death, and do not die. Imam al-Qurtubi. Also, it has other references. And in the essay, Death, Dying, and the Afterlife. So actually the study of Quran has a great introduction, but also a number of thematic articles in the back. And I think the Death, Dying, and Afterlife article is by Sheikh Hamza, actually. Um, in this Quran. Look at that article regarding the taking of the soul while human beings are sleeping. His companion, my Lord, I lay my soul, have mercy upon it. And if thou dost send it back, protect it with that with which thou protectest thy righteous servants.
Can you read that one more time? Because
Yeah. In thy
you
name, my
glitched
Lord.
on.
Oh,
Good.
sorry. Let me read it again.
Yeah.
In thy name, my Lord, and in thee do
Mm.
I raise it. If thou dost take my soul, have mercy upon it. And if thou dost send it back, protect it with that with which thou protectest thy righteous servants.
Mm.
Did that
Beautiful.
come through?
That
Yeah.
did. That was beautiful.
A term appointed indicates the moment of death. And so, yeah, it's a little bit longer, but that's pretty much good for us. I think maybe verse 60, we can end. I'm looking at
Well,
66. I have a note to
but
look at 66. Yeah.
there's a beautiful command for the prophet to say something in ayah 53, 54, and 55. And
Oh,
to me,
good.
this was so beautiful that I promised myself that we would read it tonight, just
Yeah.
without even if we don't comment on it. Yeah. Can
Yes.
you read
I have.
Abdul Halim's translation of that?
Yes, I had it marked as well, but I flew over it for time. But
Okay.
I'm glad you pulled me back.
It's just so
Say,
beautiful.
say, God says, my servants who have harmed yourselves by your own excess, do not despair of God's mercy.
Mm.
God forgives all sins. He is truly the most forgiving, the most merciful. The next verse is, turn to your Lord, submit to him before the punishment overtakes you and you can no longer be helped. Follow the best teaching sent down to you from your Lord. وَاتَّبِعُوا أَحْسَنَ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكُمْ. Which is really interesting, because you can, maybe this is an allusion to kind of reading things that don't give meanings that are wholesome. You can twist revelation. And so when interpretation is taking you in that direction and there are other possibilities, وَاتَّبِعُوا أَحْسَنَ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكُمْ.
Follow what is best. Yeah.
Follow the best. What is best sent down to you from your Lord before the punishment suddenly takes you unawares. And your soul says, woe is me for having neglected what is due to God and having been one of those who scoffed. I mean, we could keep reading. But
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, I have more notes, but that was, I think, my last hard stopping place in Surah Az-Zumar.
Okay, well, there's mention, we haven't talked about the trumpet.
Yes.
وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ. So there's this, the trumpet that's found in other religions as well, as somehow sounding the end, the hour. It's interesting,
It's interesting and also, a little bit unnerving. The idea is that this will be a blast that is heard, right, all across the planet, it seems. And the blast itself will lay waste to, I guess, what we build. And there's another, I did notice that there's another verse here that that has one of your favorite images here about the heavens being rolled up in Ayah 67. On Judgment Day. So these Meccan surahs, of course, have a really graphic description about heaven, hell, and the shock of Judgment Day. And so we're going to see that come again and again in these Meccan surahs. But did you notice that in Ayah 67?
وَمَا قَدْرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ وَالْأَرْضُ جَمِيعًا قَبْضَتُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَالسَّمَاوَاتِ مُطَوِّيَاتٌ بِيَمِينِهِ. They'll be kind of it will be in his grip, in his grip.
Yeah.
And then subhanahu wa ta'ala amma yushrikun, kind of rolled up, right? Mutawiyat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the earth will be in God's grip, in his grasp, and the heavens will be rolled up like a scroll.
Right. Jamian. Yeah. Yes. And so you will be surprised that after we talked about this, I heard on NPR, there was a scientist on it, they've got new data, and the prevailing theory was that this dark energy will continue to kind of, the rate at which the galaxies are moving away from each other is just going to accelerate and will just disperse. And all the galaxies will be left on their own. But now they've gotten fresh data, and it looks again like actually the rate is decreasing, and we might be back to the rolling back collapse theory.
So the universe is like an accordion that's kind of expanding, and then it's going to be pulling back.
Wow. Right. So when you read this kind of being rolled up in his biyaminihi, in his right hand, it's just gives you this imagery that we're getting right now from science. Maybe the last verse here, because you talk about the dramatic descriptions of this day of judgment, and it's also the name of the chapter comes Zumar, the throngs or the crowds. Wasiqa alladhina, this is verse 73. Those who were mindful of their Lord, alladhina taqaw, will be led in throngs to the garden, Zumara.
Yeah.
When they arrive, they will find its gates wide open, and its keepers will say to them, peace be upon you. You have been good. come in. You are here to stay. It's just a lovely. But before that, it talks about وَسِيقَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِلَى جَهَنَّمَ زُمَرًا, and those who rejected the truth will be led to hell in throngs. So both of those are there.
Yeah. And then let's end it on a positive note. You read 73. Let's read 74, and that can cap it for tonight, inshallah.
All right. And so maybe we should do 74 and 5, end the surah. Let's finish out the surah.
Let's do that. Okay.
So, and they will say, praise be to God who has kept, you are here. So the previous verse ended, you're here to stay. Come in
the garden.
Here to stay.
Yes.
In the garden. You've been good. Come in. You're here to stay. And they will say, praise be to God who has kept his promise to us and given us this land as our own. Now we may live wherever we please in the garden. How excellent is the reward of those who labor. You, prophet, will see the angels surrounding the throne, glorifying their Lord with praise. True judgment will have been passed between them, and it will be said, praise be to God, Lord of the worlds. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. What a lovely.
May God reward you and bless you for this tonight, and thank you so much, Sidi.
Thank you. I think that's a good note to end on. Alhamdulillah.
So inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow. Now, tomorrow is going to be night 27, and we're taught that the night of power is going to be on one of the odd nights toward the end of Ramadan, and so tomorrow night may very well be the night of power. We don't know, but this is the night that the Qur'an teaches, in which the Qur'an was descended, and that night is better than 1,000 months. So tonight, I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight or tomorrow night, inshallah, and to see where our unscripted journey takes us, inshallah, in the night of power.
Inshallah. And may God bless you and everyone who's watching your nights of worship. May they be blessed and may be accepted. Ameen.
Wa iyyakum, inshallah, and for you too, Sidi.
Okay.
All right. God bless you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.